Hey, I'm Daniel Prinn, and I'm a staff writer here with The Movie Buff and one of the hosts of The Movie Buff Show. On this episode, I was able to speak with Matt Harris, the screenwriter of the new Netflix film The Starling, which is now streaming on Netflix. Starring Melissa McCarthy and Chris O'Dowd, McCarthy plays Lilly, who is grieving from a significant loss and does battle with a starling who has taken nest on her property. As Lilly tries to expel the bird, she learns more about grieving and healing and loving along the way. Let's get right into the interview with Matt Harris.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, Daniel, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Glad to be chatting with you for the Movie Buff Show about the Starling. Congrats on the Netflix release.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's very exciting.
For sure. Now, I was reading in the press release that this was on the 2005 Blacklist.
That's right. Yeah.
So what's that journey been like? That was a little while ago, and now it's 2021.
Yeah. No, it was a while ago. I don't think the Blacklist was anything what it is today either, because honestly, between you and me, I'd never heard of the Blacklist. And it was a friend of mine who was an editor. He says, "Did you know your script, The Starling, is on the Blacklist in 2005? I go, "What are you talking about?" You know, I go, "My script is blacklisted?" I really thought that it meant something bad until somebody explained to me that's like a lot of the development executives read and then they vote on what scripts they like. And so it was interesting for me because I think I had like 3 votes or something like that. And I remember reading the list of movies that had the most votes, and I think everything on that front page has been made, you know. I think I was like the last holdout that hadn't been made. You know, so yeah, it was great. You know, I mean, and I wasn't necessarily sure this film was ever going to get made. It's not the easiest, most marketable project, right? It's a little bit of a quirky dramedy about, you know, death and attempted suicide and, you know, depression. And it's dealing with some heavy stuff in a weird way. And I don't think that's, you know, it's not an easy box to check for a lot of studios, for sure. So, you know, it was great. It was very gratifying that it was on the Blacklist. But, you know, a lot of the meetings I went to was like, man, this is a film we really want to see, but it's not a film we could ever make, you know. So you hear that a lot of meetings, you know. And what else you got and what else you were interested in doing? So, you know, after a while, you know, that kind of wears on you. Hopefully you find somebody. And, you know, I did. They paired me with some filmmakers and producers who were generally interested in making this film. But it, you know, it was tough. It just never really happened. And then Ted Melfi came along and he was very interested in doing it. And then this other film, Hidden Figures, came along, an opportunity for him to go make that, which was great. And so he did that. He disappeared. And then I thought, well, okay, that route, that was an interesting journey. That's over. We'll see what happens next. And then I honestly thought it was a butt dial I got from his producer. I really did. I was driving home. I was like, wow, why is he calling me? He probably didn't mean to. So called him back. He's like, oh, I was just wondering if anybody had optioned it, and the option had happened to have expired within like a month of this call. And it's like, actually, no, not right now. And he's like, hold tight. Next thing you know, we're having lunch the next day with Ted and me and Dylan, and we're talking about who to go to. And he's got this window in his schedule, and we knew Melissa McCarthy had a window in her schedule. They were interested in going to her and switching the gender roles around. And so it was just moving so fast. And that was in May of 2019. And by July 30th, I think, of that year, I was walking onto a set, you know, and I was blown away by how quickly it took forever. And then all of a sudden they're making this thing overnight, you know, and like a 30-day shoot too. It's over. It's just bam. She's got to go to Australia to shoot a new film. And it's crazy.
Wow. Now, what was it like kind of, did you have to change the dialogue a lot to suit McCarthy and Chris O'Dowd?
You know, no, not a lot. Not a lot. It did help though, you know, when you knew their voice a little bit, you know, you could kind of like sneak some stuff in that, you know, maybe you couldn't have with somebody else. You know, there's a little bit, they can pull off wit and dry, you know, pretty well. and some lines. So it was kind of fun to be able to do that. But they're really good together,
Yes,
They're
they
really,
are.
yeah, they're really good. They have this chemistry that's really believable, right? And that's what you
Mhm.
want. You want something that feels real genuine. And that's what I like about both of them, to be honest with you, too. I wanted this, I didn't, this is not a dig on Ryan Reynolds, right? But I don't know if you would believe a Ryan Reynolds and a Blake Lively in this sort of scenario, It's like, oh, what the
Okay.
fuck? You guys are beautiful people. You'll figure it out and get beyond this thing, And I'm not saying Chris and Melissa aren't beautiful, but I wanted them to be real people. That's what I'm saying. And I feel like they embody real people, and I wanted that. And so I was really happy that we got those two.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, so
because
not like supermodels in the roles, right?
Yeah,
But still good looking in.
the setting of the story was a small town. It was like her job was of insignificance in most of our minds. She was an assistant grocery store manager. She's kind of an invisible character. I wanted
Sure.
that because these are obviously real people, but they have real lives, real struggles, real aspirations. And I just don't, I'm not judging, but I don't think we really explore those enough. And
Okay.
I think some of the best things come out of that. And so that's what I wanted it to be. I wanted it to feel like, yeah, these could be real people. These could be real people. This could be, and I understand that. I think we all relate to real people a lot better.
Okay, yeah, I agree. Now, was the Starling always there from the first draft, or did that come about in the years since 2005?
No, it was from the get-go. It really was. Yeah. I tried, the Mockingbird was already taken. I always tell people, but no, it was the first idea. I knew a little bit about that species, if you will, bird, and I needed to find a way to represent this bigger idea, and so it served my purposes.
Okay, sorry. I just saw the army crawl in the background, and I'm just laughing.
Oh, was somebody just in the background? I missed it. My wife's been coming in and out. She probably did an army crawl. Yeah,
that's why I was chuckling.
Oh, that's good.
It'll be funny on the playback.
Keep it going. Make her do it all day long.
That's awesome. Now, what was it like visiting the set?
It's a thrill, for me, to be honest. It was a big thrill. We sort of toil in obscurity and uncertainty and wonder if anything that we create could possibly see the light of day. It's hard to imagine, that somebody would put millions of dollars into something that you wrote and put it up on a screen, for crying out loud. And so when you walk out on a set and you see lines of Star Wagon trailers and lines of production trucks and all kinds of hundreds of people working, it's frightening. You're like, wait a minute, don't you know I don't know anything what I'm doing? I have no clue. Why are you here? And at the same time, it's very empowering, but quickly you realize as a role as a writer, your job is done. It's a director's film. Thank you very much. We'll take it from here. You passed the baton. You don't have to keep running behind us. We've got it. That's pretty much the experience that was for me.
Okay. And what were your reactions to watching the film and seeing what Ted did with some of your scenes or all of your scenes?
It was interesting because you see these things in your own mind, right? When you're writing them.
Yeah.
And you even have it down to like pieces of music you imagine at the same time. There were similarities and differences, but both kind of blew your mind, right? Like there was a scene in particular that I'm thinking of. It was a sort of a quiet interlude that I remember, and I used to listen to some music that I imagined would work in that. The composer, I don't even know, like they were inside my head or something, like they stole the same kind of music that I had imagined, this sort of piano music. So it was wonderful to see that. But then I was really surprised by some of the stuff that Ted was able to pull off in some of the scenes that I didn't even imagine, and like finding some of the more like when she went to see the exterminator,
Okay.
where she goes to try and, that turned into a really funny scene. It was kind of meant to be a little funny, I'd kind of written him as more of like a Reverend Jim Jonestown type of guy, ran this extermination shop, but I love the character and the way he came across, so I think in the casting it changes things, and the way that Melissa kind of was improving a couple little lines in that scene too, going, isn't that a lot of birds? 400 billion, isn't that a lot of birds? She
Okay,
kept
that was
saying it. She kept
improvised.
saying it. It wasn't scripted like her to keep saying it, but she just kept, that just seems like a lot. And it really made me laugh. So it was fun.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Now, one thing I wanted to ask, I guess we're staying on the topic of the animals almost. Where did the idea for Kevin Kline being in mental health and then his character going from mental health to animals, where did that come from?
Yeah, well, a couple of ideas. One is like I did work in mental health when I was going to school,
Right.
going to college. It was a great night job, allowed me to do a lot of reading, studying, get some homework done, and make money at the same time. Better than, I would have been, say, as a dishwasher, or doing one of the odd jobs we always do in college. So
okay,
that really opened my eyes, and obviously I absorbed a lot and was taught a lot about how mental health works. But I also saw the toll that it takes on people that work in that field, particularly therapists and doctors, and some who were left it as a result. But then I had also this experience in college where I had to get surgery on my ankle. I tore it up playing basketball, and I went in to have the cast taken off. And I was sitting there in his room. They always have the plaques on the wall, the diplomas. And there was that board certified orthopedic surgery, blah, blah. And right next to it was a diploma from like University of Illinois School of Veterinary Medicine. Same doctor. I'm like, what? And so he comes in and I'm like, bro, you're a vet? And he's like, was a vet, And he didn't even think it was funny. I'm like, wait a minute, I just got operated on by a veterinarian.
Like,
he didn't.
But I'm a human.
Yeah, right. Hello. But hey, so that kind of stuck with me, I think, but I was looking for this character who had left that field and was doing something else. And so that kind of clicked for me. I feel like somebody who's got that type of kindness and empathy to work in mental health, where would they go? And I think working with animals is a great place to still find an expression for that. And, that's why.
Okay, neat. Now, we've talked a lot about the comedy, but I'd love to like focus on like the drama aspect of it and just how you thought of the grieving process and how it feels like Jack's character and Jack and Lilly are on two different worlds, grieving with the loss of a child.
Yeah, I think grief takes on many different shapes and forms, and certainly this is an exploration of that. I did a little bit of research on how families try to process the loss of a child in the same way that they lost their child. So it can be, for whatever reason, particularly difficult to accept. And unlike, say, a child who perishes from disease or even an accident, you want to try to find reasons, right?
Sure.
Even in an accident, you say, well, I would have turned left instead of turning right, or if they would have crossed the street, run a red light, whatever that horrible incident involves. And with cancer or any kind of illness, we know that can take people. But with something like sudden infant death syndrome, it's very hard to understand why it happens. And I think it's very easy to, somehow it almost feels personal,
Mm-hmm.
In my background understanding of this couple, at least as I drew them up, they were a couple who had already tried to have children and were told, I'm sorry, you're never going to be able to have kids for whatever reasons. And they were okay with that, right? They had their life, they had a life together, and they were happy. making that life together, when suddenly nature finds a way, right? Surprises you, and it gives you something, right?
Mhm.
And then at the same token, it takes it away, and we don't understand why, and for either of us. And so that's what I imagine. And I think that was
Okay.
particularly, look, they're not going to react to it the same. And I think the husband, in dealing with like blaming himself, also had to come to terms with his own sort of emotional instability that he had never really faced and dealt with, and he had to. So
Okay. Now, writing all that, like, and this could mean a lot. Did you ever feel pressure? Because this, like, dealing with themes this heavy, it feels like it could mean a lot to a lot of people.
yeah,
Did you ever feel pressure
I
thinking
did.
about that?
I did. You know what? I felt like, because I used to read, I remember reading specifically web pages dedicated to children who had been lost, right? And
Okay.
mothers writing letters addressing those children. It was heavy stuff reading it. I have a stack over here. I have like poems that parents have written to their lost children, and a number of like personal letters, like they were trying to communicate still. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like they were
Yeah.
still processing. This isn't over with. It never really ends. And so I felt a responsibility to try to tell something true. I absolutely did, very much so. And in particularly in the world of mental health, maybe it was because I worked in it for a little bit. I wasn't a therapist by any means, I was exposed to it, and I realized its value and its importance and how it's so frequently misunderstood. So particularly in today's world, mental health. So I've certainly felt a responsibility to treat it real. Let's face it, like depictions of mental hospitals in films haven't always been so great,
Sure.
those were certainly not my experiences, and I worked on adolescent wings, I worked on adults, I worked on drug and alcohol, I worked on mental health wings, and so I was kind of exposed to a lot of it, and it's very different, very different. Confrontation, those types of things, they happen, and it's for a reason. When you're surrounded 24 hours a day with the hospital setting, and that hospital setting is reminding you, you're constantly being reminded of why you're there. That sort of forces you to deal with things. And
Yeah.
yeah, I remember a doctor telling me that. I was like, this kid's not dealing with his issues while he's here. It's obvious to me, this kid who had attempted suicide. And he goes, oh yeah, he is. And he goes, look around. He sees this 24 hours a day, the same thing you and I see. When he sees these walls, he's reminded about where he's at. He's reminded of why he's here. And he'll come around. He'll start to deal with it. And they do. They're right. And they do start to process it,
Okay. You gave me chills when you were talking about the letters. So, and I think you get that
Yeah.
raw
And I
power
couldn't even throw them
into the
away.
film.
Yeah.
No,
They're really powerful.
for sure. Now,
Thanks so much for checking out the interview. The Movie Buff would like to thank Matt Harris for taking the time to speak to us about his film, The Starling. Again, you can check it out on Netflix right now. As well, you can visit our website at TheMovieBuff.net.